Namaste. Psychoanalysis and philosophy, sustainability. Sustainability is a cool word today in the area of industrial development and environment. However, the concept has deep and profound application in the areas of psychology, psychoanalysis, culture, and politics. So let us discuss this cool word with our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, Mr. Vaidya.
Namaste.
Mr. Vaidya, can we start with the meaning of the word and its evolution?
Human beings as a species are hardwired to maximize the satisfaction of their desires, pleasure, goodness, and progress. However, these good things that we seek for, we want them on a permanent basis and in an infinite quantity. The reality that we are in does not allow us that luxury. So the good things that we want are not permanent, they are not in abundance by default, and they are not predictable. And that being the situation, we always want to make the good things that we want as enduring as possible, as intense as possible, as voluminous as possible. And this brings in the whole concept of sustainability. How can we make good things that we want last for as long as we want, or at least last long, if not as long as we want? And this applies to all areas of life. That what we want by default is not perpetual, by default is not predictable, by default is not infinitely available. And therefore, we have to think and do something to make it as more available for as long a period of time as possible. And that brings an area of element of the whole concept of sustainability. A simple example at individual level could be, if you have ₹1,000,000, you can spend them out in 1 month or spend them slowly over your lifetime. And if you spend it over a lifetime, the happiness, the security, lot of things that come with the money, they become more sustainable. So you have to deny immediate gratification in order to ensure sustainability. That applies to a family situation also. That in order to make the happiness of the family sustainable, one individual may have to defer or sacrifice his own immediate gratification. And take it further, if one family is a landlord family, say in a village, and they are like feudal lords, so they have all the money of the village with them, and their happiness is sustainable, their well-being is sustainable, but at the cost of the well-being of the entire village. So here we have a system of systems kind of situation, that a small part of a larger system is sustainable, but the sustainability is based upon non-sustainability and exploitation of a larger system. And this brings in the complexity into the area of sustainability, that we have to do a system of systems thinking, and sustainability therefore is tied not to the well-being of an elite few, but for the greater general good. So when we talk of sustainability, we are talking of greater general good. And even this concept of sustainability essentially is a Western idea, because it is still, even though democratic, it is still anthropomorphic. Which presupposes, in a very biblical terms, that the world is for the consumption of human beings. And we are special compared to other species. However, if we look at the Eastern thinking, where sustainability is looked at not from a utilitarian point of view or an anthropomorphic point of view, but from a philosophical point of view, where every element of existence has an equal right for sustainability, the human species has to restrict its own consumption and its own rights in congruence with the rights of other species and the interspecies rights and the rights of the planet as a whole, that creates a framework for thinking out sustainability. And that thinking out of sustainability is neither democratic nor anthropomorphic, it is existential and philosophical, essentially spiritual. So those are elements which are bound up in our discussion. Uh, you can think of sustainability in an individual point, from an individual point of view, from a collective point of view, and link both of them. Two important elements come up here: the element of time and scale. Sustainability, when you think about, are you thinking about 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1000 years? Based upon what is the time scale, the thinking on sustainability will differ. If you are looking for 150 years, nuclear power is a very sustainable thing. But if you are looking at 500 years, it may not be a sustainable thing. Because the waste material may not degrade itself under the earth for hundreds of years. So till 500 years, till we keep dumping in, it's very sustainable. It will not create fossil fuel pollution and many other things. But once the buried part becomes substantial, there is no solution to what to do with it. So the time scale is very important. The second is the scale. Are you looking at sustainability of one part of the world or the whole world? For example, the electronic waste from developed countries is dumped onto developing countries and they process it for the developed countries. The environmentally polluting industries like textiles or chemicals, they are stopped in the developed world. So that part of the world gets into sustainability zone and the developing world gets into even more unsustainability zone. And there is no way you can do it for a long time because ultimately it's one ecosystem. It will go everywhere, finally speaking. So that is another aspect of sustainability. The evolution actually has happened uh, in two different ways. In ancient India, we always had sustainability built into our thinking. So if you look at Indian culture, Indian spirituality, the sustainability is built into the center of it. Whether it is the uh, environmental orientation of Indian culture or the social structure, the culture, the values of life, the model of life, everything has sustainability once upon a time built in. It's no longer there today, but it was built in because it was one of the few designed cultures of the world. Designed by the rishis, but essentially it's a designed culture. So designed by the rishis, evolved and purified and uh, refined over hundreds and thousands of years. So that is one element. That of course has gone by. Uh, it's no longer operative in the real world. We see it only in textbooks. We see it as what it was in history at one point in time, but no longer a practical truth. In the modern world, the music community.
Can we just take a small break? Just 2 minutes.
In the Western context, um, sustainability has become more of a fashionable statement, but with very good intentions. Some of the NGOs, some countries, citizens also have really good intentions, but it has more become a corporate brochure item. But that said, it's an important concept and evolving fast, taking roots, going beyond being a fashion statement, but it has evolved in the context of corporates. So sustainability has evolved in the area of the working of the corporates that they should not be spoiling the environment. So the use of chemicals, the use of plastic, treatment of effluents, use of mineral resources, use of energy, use of water. So sustainability has got applied to corporate working. We still don't see sustainability as much applied to the government working or to the agricultural working or to the way individuals live. They still live by and large in an unsustainable manner. But it has definitely got applied to the corporate world. This concept, however, has become a market concept. It has not gone to the area of politics, culture, or arts. And this is very important because sustainability as a concept is not strictly limited to the marketplace. It is not only a market concept. It is as much applicable to culture, to politics, to medicine, to psychological health, to all areas of life. And today we will stress a little more on how it applies in the area of psychological health.
I believe you want to take this the presently a very relevant concept to the areas of, as you said, health, psychology, culture, and governance, and mainly focus on psychology, I believe, out of all.
Let us take one example of each and then come to the psychological aspect of it. Take medicine and look at the way we have dealt with the bacterial resistance, the bacterial infections. What was a blockbuster approach soon became an unsustainable approach as the resistance developed. We develop certain drugs and we see that over a period of 10 to 20 years, they develop so many side effects. The side effects need new medications. Our solutions are creating problems which need to be solved further. So that is in the area of medicine. We also see how we have not paid any attention to public health aspect, particularly immunity, and we see how we are paying the price in COVID. Too much reliance on industrial food, too much reliance on medications, not living in a sustainable way, and we see the consequences in our COVID response. Take the example of culture. We went from one extreme to the other, from no individual freedom to no individual responsibility. And after that, 30, 40 years after that, we see in the Western civilization, the number of children born are not able to replace the number of people who die, and therefore they have to get immigration from outside. Now imagine if the whole world had done the same thing, where would you have got immigrants from? So essentially here, the more sustainable culture of the non-Western world is making up for the mistakes of the unsustainable culture of the Western world. So this is a very good example of sustainability not thought out in the area of culture and the consequent price you have to pay. Similarly, look at the countries where the jihadi culture has taken over. Again, because of non-applicability of the sustainability concept and concept of moderation and balance and science, you see those difficulties. Come to the area of politics. From no individual participation to too much of individual participation, almost making a governance by referendum the rule. And this woke culture taking on political correctness to completely unsustainable levels. Take the example of human rights taken to the unsustainable levels. And you start losing battle to the jihadis or to the extremists. Take the example of the political systems where the so-called free market and free politics has given rise to a new elitism and a sham democracy, and people are losing faith in democracy. So all these are areas where we see sustainability not applied or wrongly applied or not thought through, and we see how we are paying price for it, and therefore the importance of the concept. In the area of psychological health, there are many areas we can focus upon. Some of the areas are individualism versus collectivism, the socio-economic and cultural aspect of sickness, the holistic health aspect, the public health aspect, and many other aspects are there which are not actually being taken care of. We'll go into it details in a few moments, but just to make a mention and drop those names. This is how you see the area of sustainability, the concept of sustainability applied in so many areas of human life, and we all see when it's not applied adequately, what price we pay.
Uh, yeah, so when we come to what price we pay, like for non-sustainable ideas being worshipped till throne of the throne in psychoanalysis.
Yeah. So in psychoanalysis, we have worshipped many false gods. In a short history, we have had many gods which were on the throne and have now been thrown off the throne. And some of them we can list out. First, the obsession with the individual. Instead of looking at psychological health as a biopsychosocial phenomena, to focus on the individual and not look at the psychology, the social, the cultural, and the political aspect of it. And this has uh, cost us because instead of factoring in these things, we have different schools. Take, for example, the cultural aspects. In Freud's time, we had what Kohut calls the guilty man. Essentially, an individual frustrated because the desires could not be satisfied. So it was essentially a drive problem, a drive frustrated. And that constituted a majority of the people, of the clients. The drive frustration model was really at work. Because of the cultural change, now we have the lonely man, the tragic man. And therefore, the problems essentially are of object loss. I'm not saying all problems, of course, I'm just talking about a majority of problems. A large group of problems in earlier times used to be because of drive frustration. Now they are because of object loss. And we are living in a very lonely world. And if we don't factor in the social effects, we cannot theorize it completely, we cannot feel it properly. So lack of sustainability in the social area is creating a different set of circumstances in the area of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. But we have still not got into that optimum zone. Sustainability essentially is about finding the optimum zone. And this is a dynamic process. The optimum zone keeps moving as the outside moves. But we have not still actually factored in the social and the cultural aspect of it. That is one. Two, we have also not contributed to uh, culture and society to make it more sustainable from our point of view. So we are not at the service of sustainability or in the area of infusing sustainability. One. Two, the obsession with individualism. Instead of finding a balance between the individual and the collective, it's an unsustainable position of individualism. And that creates separate set of problems for the individual and for the society. Third, instead of finding the sustainable optimum zone between rights and responsibilities, it is more towards rights. We say we want people to be more responsible, but that is not how it operates in technique. It is, I mean, if you have to draw a line strictly, it is more towards rights and less towards responsibility. We may like to say it otherwise, we may like to say it is balanced, but we know it is not balanced. So this is one more aspect. The obsession with a rigid technique, and we will look at only affect and not go so much by thoughts and behavior, or not look at holistic healing or spirituality and what they have to say about it, or not draw lessons from history on sustainability and from there try to figure out what is best for society and individual. It also comes in the form of not dealing so much with changing the outside, partly because we are helpless there, but partly also because it's our training not to focus so much on the outside but on the inside. Not only because the individual is powerless, but it's not in our training. So these are some of the aspects where the I also look at one more aspect of the narcissistic self-righteousness that has stepped into whole of the edifice, and that's one of the too much of cost, too much of time, too much of self-righteous narcissism, not listening to the patient, not looking at why results are not coming, not looking at alternative options, not being open to spiritual and holistic healing areas. And all of this has created uh, many problems on the count of sustainability in terms of what we contribute, how our understanding and healing is, and also in terms of the uh, the significance of this whole area itself. Psychoanalysis itself has gone on an ups and downs, on a sinusoidal wave. It has not been able to maintain its own position in a sustainable way. I mean, of course, that's a different kind of sustainability we are talking about, not really. Uh, I should rather say the 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 constancy of primacy, so to say, not really the sustainability in the sense we talk, but the rise and fall also has to do with uh, partly with big with impractical and unsustainable ideas. So I don't think the concept of sustainability has really gone into psychoanalysis so much. It is still more short-term and individual hedonistic oriented enterprise.
Does the concept of social sustainability influence orientation of psychoanalysis?
Yeah, because the type of pathology that we see coming in large numbers, no doubt has a social stamp upon it. At different points in society's history, different type of pathologies are seen. Uh, Look at Freud's time, and hysteria was such a common thing. Where has it gone now? Uh, Look at today's problems of loneliness and object loss. They were never so much of a problem in those days. So there is no doubt that social conditions are responsible for creation of many pathological conditions, especially on a larger scale. And the point there is that non-sustainability in the culture creates this epidemic proportion pathologies. So this today we see the pandemic of the epidemic of loneliness, the epidemic of object loss, and the consequences of object loss. And essentially, it's an outcome of culture. So there is no doubt that if the culture is not sustainable, if the society is not sustainable, if the economics of the society is not sustainable, it is going to create stress, and the stress is going to create pathology. And here we are talking about the public health aspect, not just an individual aspect. We are talking about a scale of pathology on an epidemic scale. Now, the point is, can psychoanalysis contribute something to culture by engaging with those who are dealing with culture? It may be religious leaders, it may be spiritual leaders, it may be the government, whoever it is. It may be the opinion makers, it may be people directly if in some country a cultural dialogue is on. So whatever be the situation, can the psychoanalytic theory and its knowledge be used to enhance sustainability of a culture. It can be done, but it is not being done because often sustainability demands self-control, responsibility, and giving up of individualism and hedonism. It may often demand institution of ethics using the concept of God and some sort of a religious edifice. And all of these are in, let me say, the spirit of psychoanalysis generally, the orientation of psychoanalysis generally has been to keep away from all this. And that does not allow psychoanalysis really to go into sustainability because of a kind of an addiction to some of the things which are non-sustainable.
One question comes to my mind that recently now, especially in the field of psychotherapy and counseling and all, there is a lot of mention of the word trauma and how trauma is looked at. So I think there are some changes happening there. I mean, people are looking at it from more broader points of view of like art therapy or psychodrama or holistic healing, and not only from the analytical point of view.
Yes,
In that case, as you are saying, the point like the social sustainability is possibly influencing the psychoanalytic field in a very small way, possibly.
yes, because there the concern is sustainability of cure and avoiding relapses. And the second element there is the sustainability of the cost and time element. Because what if it is not sustainable for an individual to afford for a long time the kind of time and money that psychoanalysis demands? So those ideas of endurance of healing and the quickness of healing to make the process more economically sustainable, that kind of thing is leading to exploration of many areas. And in the area of trauma also we see a lot of research, both transgenerational as well as transpersonal. And we also see a lot of holistic healing uh, tools being used for healing of trauma. But one problem which I see in that area is excessive generalization of the word trauma. Because when you extend it too much, right, because trauma has a very specific meaning in the area of psychological health. If you dilute that specificity of meaning, then every psychological problem is a trauma. Because no problem arises unless some traumatic experiences happen. So if you generalize it that much, I mean, the word will lose its meaning and will lose all the profits that we have by defining that term. But this is what I see, that in some cases there is excessive generalization. But if we keep that apart, I think it's a very good movement to combine different forms of healing to arrive at a sustainable and a swift method, and also an integrated method of healing.
Then are we bringing in society, culture, and tradition into psychoanalysis as we bring sustainability in as a concept?
We should be, but we are not, because psychoanalysis has been a very individualistic, hedonistic, and elite uh, enterprise. So if you look at psychoanalysis as a healing modality, and if you ask the question, is it passing the test of sustainability? The answer is no. Neither in terms of advances in knowledge, nor in terms of healing, nor in terms of social affordability or applicability on a mass scale. So those are some of the difficult parts of psychoanalysis.
Is health another area where we have paid the cost of quick worship?
Right, it is. I think too much of worship of allopathy without adequately appreciating its limitations and side effects. It's only now coming up that people are doing intense area research in the area of adverse drug reactions. And that is really bringing about questions on sustainability of allopathy. Over a long-term use, what happens to the individual, how the uh, pathogens are developing resistance, and uh, how despite all the advances we claim, we really don't have very strong enduring vaccines for most of the pathogens. Even the COVID we are talking about, nobody is sure whether it will be strong enough, the immunity will be strong enough for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or again we will have to go in for vaccination. Nobody knows about it. So after worshipping the false god of allopathy for quite some time, I think people are now bringing in questions of sustainability, and with that, a new wave of honesty will come into allopathy and in public health in general. I also believe that it will bring in holistic healing to the center.
Can we look at politics and culture in terms of sustainability?
Uh, One very important element here is the consequence over a long period of time, over a series of events. That event A happens, then event B happens, that C happens, and after D, some consequence comes. So when we apply the concept of sustainability, we are not essentially looking at a cause-effect direct relationship in a short period of time. There are some instances where we are looking, for example, industrial effluents, for example, certain unsustainable genetic seeds. Those are different cases. But generally, when we look at politics and culture, we are looking over a long frame. That if you do X and this becomes a precedent, and somebody does X plus Y, and then somebody does X plus Z, and then horrible consequences come. But starts with X. Because X happened, X plus Y could happen. Because X plus Y could happen, X plus Z could happen. And X plus Z was a disaster. But the disaster starts with X. So this is how a chain of events leads to a final accumulated effect of something horrible. And when we look at politics, we and culture, we see the same thing. Because sustainability essentially is a quest for the optimum zone. And when we lose sight of the optimum zone, we get into trouble. And in politics, we see how a sham democracy has come to exist in most of the democratic countries because of non-participation of citizens in power structure and decision making, and too much of corporate influence and media influence. So we see how a non-sustainable turn has been taken by democracy, and unless it is brought back, people will start experimenting with non-democratic regimes. Same for culture. In the name of equality and in the name of individual freedom, we have gone from one extreme to the other. And just as the previous extreme was inhuman, this extreme is unsustainable. And that inability to find and operate in the optimum zone, that's a universal human problem. As a species, we can either not find the optimum zone or not live there for a long time. And in politics, there is a very good book, The Rise and Fall of Political Empires. And that book talks about the fact that every emperor wants his empire to last for 1,000 years. Nobody has been able to do it. So sustainability is very difficult in the political area. Maybe it is the will of God or will of nature that power has to keep shifting from one part of the world to the other. And therefore, in every century, you see different geographies emerging as empires. And despite the best of intentions of everybody, it is not possible to bring sustainability in the age of political empires in terms of centuries. So politics and culture are areas where in culture it is relatively easier to bring in sustainability because then it's easy to generate a consensus on the most core areas in most parts of the world. But in politics, it's extremely difficult to bring in an element of sustainability.
Is sustainability not challenging perpetual creative destruction that is going on in nature?
It is, it is. And therefore it is not a fixed zone, but a dynamic moving zone. And in every context, it's a different thing we are looking at. So what is sustainable in environmental context is one thing. What is sustainable in the cultural context is another thing. And how to link them up to create a system of system solution requires a very large integrated holistic thinking, which can happen only if people from all areas come together and work out this idea. Till then, we'll have to make do with individual isolated applications of the concept of sustainability. Maybe it may not be linked to each other. The zones of the packets of sustainability may not be linked to each other, and that's a grand idea. But even that is a large advance over where we are. So that is true that in the nature of things, political power keeps moving, societies keep rising and falling, individuals keep rising and falling. There is nothing perpetual. And that being the case, we know we are fighting a difficult war. We can't win the war, but we can win many battles, small battles in the war. So our lot is to do the best that we can and maximize whatever we can to the extent that we can. But it is true, we don't have a perpetual solution of sustainability in any area of life. Things are changing around us, and the ideas of sustainability have to correspondingly change. There is no one solution forever.
Now we come to a very interesting question, maybe very controversial in some sense. But is sustainability compatible with change?
Yes, in fact, one good learning from many of studies of corporate culture is you stabilize and you change. So even when you want change, you go through cycles of stability and change. So you introduce a change, allow it to be stable, master it, and only after you master it, you draw all the profits, you go for the next innovation and the next change. Perpetual change is easy to speak, but in practice, it's extremely difficult and often it is a loss-making proposition. So even there, we have to find some sustainable zone of the rate of change. So that is one part. Second part, uh, sustainability, when we talk and we know that we are in the middle of change and there is no way we can stop change or reduce the rate of change, our sustainability concepts also have to get equally dynamic. And we have to be careful that we should not be using the stick of sustainability to beat progress with, because it can easily be a concept which stalls progress and which makes a binary of sustainability versus progress. And when you start having this binary of sustainability versus progress, there is no way sustainability can win. People are bound to think short term, and very few people will be thinking long term. So, in that kind of a binary, sustainability will be injured and go out of the window. So, sustainability has to factor in the real life circumstances, the inevitability of change, and therefore not become anti-change, but become a part of the change which humanizes and sustains, makes sustainable the change which is going on. So it's a benevolent, stabilizing, democratizing, and making it egalitarian of the change that is happening. If that is the flavor of sustainability, people will be with it, everyone will be with it. Not everyone, but most will be with it. And it will be able to get practically applied and not only being talked about.
Is sustainability the same as goodness? And can we separate goodness from endurance?
It is not the same, because sometimes you may have to do very difficult things to ensure sustainability. For example, if you close down a company which is polluting the environment, many people will lose their jobs and their children will be out of schools. So nobody can say from their point of view that a measure of sustainability applied was a good one. But it may be necessary to save the environment for thousands and lakhs of people. So there is a harsh aspect of sustainability when it comes to pay the price of sustainability. So if everything is paid by the government, people like sustainability. If everything is paid by the corporate, people like it. But when they have to pay a price, they don't like it. So if they have to pay something higher for the automobile they purchase, because the emission norms are stricter, they don't want it. So there is a price of sustainability like everything else. It's not a free of cost thing. So in every situation, it may not be a win-win. It may be a win-lose situation. In those situations, it may look harsh and it may not be equated to goodness by those who are suffering. But we have to look at the greater general good and use public funding to pay the price to the extent public funding can pay.
And can we separate goodness from endurance?
It's difficult to separate because when we look at, sorry, I said something. What did I say?
You said it is difficult to separate.
No. So they are together because if you look at sustainability and goodness, you want something to be sustainable, and if you are from a right approach, essentially it is because of some goodness. So when you talk of sustainability, essentially you're talking of the optimum zone, and in the optimum zone, many times you have to come out of the maximum into the optimum, and this brings in an element of goodness that you are trying to do the greater general good for everyone. And therefore, at its heart, you can't separate sustainability and goodness. Without goodness, the whole idea will become only a utilitarian idea. And that utilitarian idea will get applied only when it's profitable and based upon who is in power and what position. So if you want a real global application in micro and macro terms, and for that kind of a scale application without discrimination, the goodness is an inseparable spirit of it. You can't separate goodness and sustainability. If you make it a mechanical concept, devoid of the concept, devoid of the emotion of goodness, it can't go very far.
We come to our last question. How do you think we can incorporate sustainability in our ideas and action here?
I think the first point is to recognize it's an important idea, and any system or ideas that we create, how far they are sustainable or sustainability promoting or sustainability damaging. And that brings in an element of thinking of what this idea or this system does on a scale in two ways: scale of the society and scale over a period of time. So when you think on scale in terms of society-wide application and a long period of time, then we realize whether this idea is really a mass replicable idea, a long endurance idea. Is the idea profitable only in the short run, but also on the long run, in small quantity and also large quantities? When that kind of thinking is done, it brings in a sense of social responsibility and ethical responsibility. And that, I think, if we bring to all areas, political, medical, psychoanalytic, and so on, it will give us far better results than what we would get without this idea.
Thank you, Mr. Vaidya, for this discussing this very relevant concept in a very new and broad way, I feel. People and everywhere sustainability is being talked about, but like we have covered aspects like social, society, culture, psychology, psychoanalysis, number of things, and how that whole concept applies everywhere. So we can look at sustainability in a more holistic way, I think. So thank you so much for this, and do write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Namaste.
Namaste.